any politician, Democrat or Republican, who acknowledges that this is not sustainable is immediately targeted or even primaried to get thrown out. I mean, someone has got to have the chutzpah to sort of stand up and say, this is not sustainable. We can't keep going this way.
Yeah, but I think they need more imagination, too. We ought to say, let's go back to federalism. Let's go back to Louis Brandeis, the great American jurist who said, America, let the states be a laboratory of democracy. Find a different way to pose the issue and to allocate the responsibilities. We are a overly centralized, bureaucratic, quasi-socialist state.
What should the federal government do?
The federal government basically ought to take care of defense. It ought to take care of, as I say, workfare and minimal involvement in the justice system. The rest of it should be states. Education is a state function. Community development, if you're going to waste money on it as a government, that's a state function. Welfare can't be managed from Washington because the welfare lobbies and all of the people behind them make it impossible.
And at least most of those states, 46 of the 50 states, have balanced budget.
They do,
they have to
but even beyond that, see, Republican government today in the United States exists at the state level. 33 state governors are Republican, 35 legislatures, I believe. If you want to get welfare under control, give the function back to those Republican and conservative governments that are responsive to the people, and let there be a competition. If New York loves giving handouts to everybody, let the taxpayers of New York pay, and pretty soon the taxpayers of New York will be living in Florida, in Nevada, in Texas, and a lot of other places. It's the only way in the modern world, 21st century, that we can deal with this runaway welfare state that is basically driving us towards bankruptcy.
But you criticize both parties for this. For example,
right.
This debate in defense, and I get this all the time, when I question adding more money to defense, I would say, well, in a $600 billion budget that is darn close to funding at the Iraq war height, surely we can examine where this money is going.
Yeah.
And then if you tell me afterwards, much like infrastructure, that we really do need more because it's all accounted for, then fine, maybe. But I'm just saying, we don't even do that. We just feel
Neil,
that.
I think it's ridiculous. Okay, the Russian defense budget is $50 billion. Sitting here in New York in your studio with you, I can see Russia from here. The GDP of New York is $1.6 trillion. The GDP of Russia is $1.3 trillion, less than New York, 7% of the U.S. economy. It's a pip-squeak, backward economy that threatens us in no way whatsoever. And if we're spending now 12 times more than Russia, that can't really threaten
more
us.
than our threats combined,
Yeah.
China.
Yes.
And all.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you about that, because a lot of people have said that all this defense spending started under Ronald Reagan, and when you were his budget director then, you could argue maybe the time was right to reassess our defense commitments. Did we go too far?
Yes, we did. I fought it tooth and nail because they lied at the time. The neocons said the Soviet Union was on the verge of first strike threat capacity. It was totally untrue. They built up the top line by hundreds of billions of dollars.
But it got the Russian Empire to fold.
The Russian Empire folded on the weight of socialism and communism that never works. It had nothing to do...
But they were plowing more into their defense.
No, they were dying.
Right?
In 1981, the Soviet Union was on death's door, and if we had more confidence in Washington in capitalism and in free markets and in the fact that the red Ponzi in China is going to sooner or later collapse on its own weight, and if they want to build sandcastles in the South China Sea, let them. It's a waste of their money.
But you
it's
could
not
argue,
a threat
you
to
were
us.
there, but with the Star Wars Defense Initiative and even the Russians, so that was crazy, the Soviets, whatever. But they did come to negotiate because they felt that this guy, this Ronald Reagan, would be crazy enough to follow up on, and it did got them to consider.
Well, Star Wars was a joke. No one ever believed it.
Well, the Russians, they came to the table.
Well, they came to negotiate because they were going bankrupt. They were economically collapsing because they tried to run a socialist economy out of the Kremlin, and they proved that socialism is wrong, and given enough time, the threat from a socialist state will always
But fast forward to today, you don't think the Donald Trump solution with big tax cuts and all that is the answer either, right? You're just saying we don't have the money for any of the above.
Yeah, because back then we had a surplus out in the middle of the decade. We could cut taxes, even raise defense. Today, we've got $10 trillion built in. You're talking about spending. There's $53 trillion of spending built in for the next decade. There's only $43 trillion of revenue under current law. I'm all for tax cuts, but you have to pay for them with spending cuts.
If we go from 2 to 3% growth and maintain that, that's 50% potentially more revenue than we could get, right?
No.
You don't buy that?
Yeah, if you could, if dogs could whistle, the world would be a chorus. You agree with me on that?
They can't whistle?
In other words, the issue, I've never heard any, but the issue is not real growth, it's nominal growth, because that drives revenue. If you try to send your taxes in based on inflation-adjusted income, you'll be in jail real quick. So what counts is nominal growth, and there's already built into the forecast 30% more nominal growth per year, nominal GDP, nominal wages, than we've had in the last 10 years. And when the White House and Treasury says, well, add another percent, that's 70% more. In other words, 5% growth of nominal GDP.
So already being rosy.
So we got rosy scenario in spades.
Okay.
Right.
Always good seeing you, I think. But you are a great education on all this stuff, and he knows his numbers. Some people disagree with how dire things are, but it wouldn't be a segment unless Stockman scared the hell out of everybody, right?